This is a story of revenge and getting back at people who have wronged you. A tale of indignation, annoyance, and exploitation. I used to work at Nickelodeon for a while as an early job to get on my feet in order to move out of my parents' house. I was always fascinated by the concept of animation and all the cool and funny things you can do with it. I worked very hard towards that dream to make it a reality. My parents, thankfully, were extremely supportive of the idea and always looked to help me where they could. Eventually, after a few years of searching, Nickelodeon themselves were hiring for animators. The pay was pretty standard and the hours weren't too obnoxious, so I decided to go for it. I loved Nickelodeon ever since I was a little kid, Rocko's Modern Life in particular. I have had vivid daydreams about the one day when my ideas would get picked up by a higher executive at any animation studio, so the mere thought of Nickelodeon themselves offering to hire me was incomprehensible. After a few days of filling things out properly and figuring out where the building was, I was off to that building that would help me hone my skills. I arrived there after 45 impatient minutes, and when I pulled up, I was a little disappointed. The building looked very grubby and barely resembled any kind of Nickelodeon building I had thought of before. The only way I could tell that the place was the right one was because of the signature Nickelodeon slime on the walls and the massive sign which hung above. I learned not to judge a book by its cover as a child, however I couldn't exactly forget about my disappointment either. So, grinning and bearing it, I trotted inside of the facility. Nobody looked like they were enjoying their jobs. When I mean nobody, I really mean nobody. They all looked like their families had forgotten about their birthdays. Constant gloomy and sad expressions on their face. But I'm getting off topic. Let's discuss what this story is really about. Revenge. Not revenge of a singular entity, but the revenge of multiple people seeking a goal to mess with Nickelodeon. The year was 2004, and the SpongeBob movie had just wrapped up in its entirety. The entire staff was completely diminished. It looked as if all joy had completely vanished in their lives. The higher executives wanted this movie out in an extremely specific and not liked date, giving us not much time around the clock to produce it. We also learned the news that Steven Hillenburg had decided to depart from the show, believing that SpongeBob had run its course. I completely agreed with this viewpoint. Look at the show Rugrats, for instance. That show has been beyond milked to death at this point. Every single time I see a damn Rugrats plush, I just want to burn it. It looked as if SpongeBob was going to be the newest money cow for the company to milk profits from. And now looking at it many years later, it indeed became the money cow for Nick. Naturally, there was some hostility and dislike amongst the staff members about how much the higher-ups were pressuring and forcing us to produce mediocre and bland episodes on a constant loop, with very little breaks or inspiration. Our pay remained consistently the same. Considering how much time we were now working, it seemed as if we were being ripped off. I was in this camp too, being very saddened and annoyed that one of my favourite companies, a media giant I used to worship as a child, was a complete facade. It was only a matter of time before we inevitably snapped. Not like a total maniac, but we snapped in anger. Then, one of us came up with a plan to finally exact revenge on this disgusting, abusive company for good. One higher executive in particular, we'll call him Gerald, was always a massive fan of Mr. Krabs. I guess he saw a spitting image of himself within the character. So in a way to get him back in particular, we crafted a Mr. Krabs oriented episode. The title was certainly a tough choice. We threw around a ton of options before we finally settled on Krabs. Now, no matter how crafty or tech savvy we were, there was no chance of us convincing the original voice actors like Tom Kenny to voice act in our little project. Our solution was to steal segments of other episodes and word sync them up with our script. Thankfully, one of our guys tinkered with audio in his spare time. It was not perfect due to the limited amount of resources we had, but it looked believable enough. I never took part in the actual animation or the voice acting. I was more the lookout and scout of the group, collecting information and picking up on signs as to if the executives suspected something was awry. After slaving away at the project for a little over a year, finally, it was completed. This is the final product. The writers involved were not the best, and often used flanderization in order to cover up some of their own flaws. The episode would begin with the pirate portrait singing the iconic theme of SpongeBob SquarePants.
Are ya ready, kids?
Aye, aye, Captain!
With the titular Sponge popping out to play his nose like a flute. The episode would then cut to show the title card. A zebra-coloured font appeared reading, Krabs. It showed what looked like a prison cell with rusting iron bars. Dollar bills covered the rest of the title, filling in the blanks of where the jail cell was not. A photo of Pearl and Mr. Krabs was sitting on the bed in the jail cell, but Mr. Krabs was crossed out. The title lingered before cutting into the actual show. It cut over to the Krusty Krab restaurant on a seemingly normal day. The place was completely stuffed with hungry customers, barking requests at the cash register. Sitting within the confines of the boat, Squidward was sloppily writing down the orders for the crowd, and hung them over the hole which led to the kitchen.
SpongeBob, I need 2 Krabby Deluxes, a side of Krabby Fries, and a kelp soda,
Squidward said in his nasally voice. Okie dokie, Squidward. 2 Krabby Double Deluxes, a side of Krabby Fries, and a kelp soda coming up, SpongeBob announced with glee, as he eagerly extended his hands and grabbed the notes. It then cut to show SpongeBob working on making the Krabby Patties. He flipped them high throughout the air while whistling a tune to himself. The sponge then expertly landed them onto a set of buns, while tossing on the usual ketchup, mustard, lettuce, cheese, and tomatoes with an onion. Happy with his work, SpongeBob dinged the bell twice, and handed the food to Squidward. Sir, I paid with a $10 note. I should have $3 in change back, the fish begun while he accepted the food. Squidward rolled his eyes and reached into the cash register. The second he did this, the dramatic audio cue would play. Mr. Krabs then bursted through the door, while looking furious.
Mr. Squidward, what is the meaning of this? We don't open the cash register!
Mr. Krabs shouted, while the furious look still lingered on his face. The crustacean was recently being forced to pay more taxes than usual, after it was discovered he had been avoiding them for a while. However, they did not know the full extent of Mr. Krabs' greed.
Mr. Krabs, he paid with a $10 note. He needs $3 in change,
Squidward responded, while being slightly unnerved by his boss's sudden outburst.
I don't care about that. In fact,
Mr. Krabs retorted while running to the front of the restaurant. He retrieved a chalkboard and begun writing something in the window. It said, "No change." Everybody in the restaurant cringed at the sound of the chalk being scribbled on.
Mr. Krabs, what has gotten into you? You're acting more like a cheapskate than usual,
Squidward retorted while being slightly annoyed.
I have to pay the bills and taxes, Mr. Squidward. Every single penny matters. In fact, due to your behavior, I'm docking your pay by $25,
the greedy crab announced, as he gave Squidward an annoyed look. The octopus looked absolutely floored at what his boss announced to him. The fish, who was waiting for his change, stood impatiently. Hey, when am I going to get my change back? He asked Mr. Krabs.
You're not getting a penny, even if I get thrown into Davy Jones's locker,
Mr. Krabs said rudely. Before the fish could respond back, Mr. Krabs cartoonishly picked him up and tossed him out of the building. Squidward grunted and made noises of annoyance before he retreated away from Mr. Krabs and exited the building to take a break. SpongeBob seemed to notice that there was something wrong with both Squidward and Mr. Krabs. He proceeded to follow Squidward out of the Krusty Krab and went to talk with him.
Squidward, is it just me, or is Mr. Krabs acting nastier than usual?
SpongeBob asked, trying to strike up a conversation with the octopus.
For once, I have to agree with you, SpongeBob,
Squidward responded. Mr. Krabs had always been a cheapskate, but not one that was nasty. The episode then cut back to show Mr. Krabs sighing with annoyance after the altercations from earlier. Some mysterious music was playing in the background, as if to indicate something sketchy was going on. A flashback suddenly came forth, showing Mr. Krabs cheerfully checking his personal vault full of his valuables. Then all of a sudden, a loud explosion shook the entire restaurant. Mr. Krabs immediately darted to the front of the restaurant and caught sight of what was happening. Plankton had planted a bomb onto one of the windows in the Krusty Krab. A giant hole in a pile of debris was the only thing that remained of the wall. Mr. Krabs charged forward to confront Plankton. Oddly, his rival did nothing to stop the confrontation from happening.
Plankton, this has to be the worst of your plans to steal me formula. You didn't even try to go forward to the restaurant,
Mr. Krabs said while giggling at Plankton. You know what, Krabs? After all these years, I've begun to realise how much of a truly awful person you are, Plankton begun. This caused Mr. Krabs to stand still awkwardly for a moment. A look of genuine confusion was on his face. And it's about time the public knew, Plankton announced. He then retrieved a hidden needle and stuck it into the back of Mr. Krabs. He injected the yellow liquid into the crustacean system. Mr. Krabs yelped slightly in pain. He proceeded to toss Plankton out of the hole he had created in the wall. This time, instead of comedically threatening Krabs as he usually did, he instead flew with a big grin on his face. The plan went perfect, my dear computer wife. You actually came up with a good plan for once, Plankton announced after he was caught mid-air by Karen, his computer wife. Now all we have to do is lay low and let this happen. Don't go messing this up like you always do, Karen said nonchalantly. Yes, soon the world will finally see the truth about Krabs, and the formula will be mine. Plankton said with his signature evil grin. It then cut back to Mr. Krabs, who was rummaging around in his office for something. He retrieved a bottle, which contained the Krabby Patty secret formula. He then proceeded to hide it within his safe, and placed a lock over it to seal it shut tight. Mr. Krabs was clearly paranoid, and distrustful, as his eyes darted all around the room, looking for a threat, and seemingly finding none. It cut back to Squidward and SpongeBob still outside.
I got it! It must be Plankton's work, Squidward. He always tries to steal the Krabby Patty secret formula. Maybe he did something to Mr. Krabs, SpongeBob said.
Alright. Look, I'm only helping you here because Mr. Krabs is borderline abusive right now. Don't think this makes us best friends or anything,
Squidward said before SpongeBob got any ideas. Plankton, what have you done to Mr. Krabs? SpongeBob shouted as he kicked the door open to the chum bucket. Squidward followed in close behind. I have no idea what you're talking about, SpongeBob, Plankton responded nonchalantly.
Cut the lies, Plankton. I know you did something to Mr. Krabs, and I want it undone pronto,
Squidward said angrily. Plankton remained calm, despite Squidward's aggressive accusations. He proceeded to hop off of Karen, and he made his way over to a computer screen. You two seriously think Mr. Krabs is a worthwhile person? SpongeBob, he pays you practically nothing, despite all of the hard work you put in for him. Squidward, he constantly annoys you, and underpays you just as much as SpongeBob. Plankton begun.
No, Mr. Krabs is a good guy. You're the one who made him nasty.
SpongeBob responded with slight hesitancy in his voice. I merely accelerated who he truly is, SpongeBob. The stuff he doesn't tell you about, Plankton continued. It then cut to Karen playing something on the massive monitor screen. Squidward and SpongeBob pulled out a seat, and both sat down watching the screen. The screen cut to a video feed that was taken a few months ago. The static crackled for a moment, until finally, the feed loaded. It showcased Mr. Krabs and Pearl getting into an altercation about how Mr. Krabs never pays for anything for her, and how he put no effort into getting her anything of substantial value. The argument got heated quickly. There were even some bleep swear words, bleeped with the sound effects from Sailor Mouth. Until the inevitable happened. Mr. Krabs, in a fear of blind anger, smacked Pearl viciously across the face with one of his claws. This knocked her on her butt, and a red mark was the only thing that remained from her attack. She began sobbing hysterically, and she attempted to run away from the house, only to be intercepted by the angry crab. Mr. Krabs had retrieved a butcher's knife and held it to Pearl's throat threateningly.
If you ever breathe a word of this to anyone, I will put you in the ground. You hear me?
Mr. Krabs bellowed at the top of his lungs. Pearl nodded quickly and ran out of the house. This was also around the same time that Pearl stopped visiting the Krusty Krab. The feed faded out into static once more. It then cut back to showcase another video that was taken more recently. Said video displayed Mr. Krabs stealing money directly from his mother's purse. A sickeningly wide grin was present on his face as he robbed his own flesh and blood clean of their hard-earned wealth. Plankton retrieved a remote and fast-forwarded the footage to show Mr. Krabs counting the money within his office. It was a massive amount, well over 6 figures. Mr. Krabs began sobbing to himself as he retrieved 2 $100 bills and 2 $50 bills and stuffed them within 2 envelopes. 150 bucks for both SpongeBob and Squidward. Mr. Krabs was beyond wealthy, yet he neglected and downright abused his daughter, robbed his own mother blind, and constantly extorted and took advantage of SpongeBob's gullibility. That was seemingly the final feed, as the TV stopped humming and the picture finally disappeared. Squidward and SpongeBob were beyond furious. I had never seen SpongeBob look this angry, ever. Not even when Squidward was unemployed and freeloading off SpongeBob. Squidward looked far worse. His bulbous head had a noticeable pulsating vein. His entire face was as red as a strawberry, and his eyes cartoonishly became volcanoes. I know you're going to think that I tampered with the footage, SpongeBob, but I promise you and Squidward that I have not messed with this, Plankton stated. But I had a good reason to further along his descent into evilness, so you and other people can stop being manipulated by him, Plankton explained. I promise you, if you help me give Mr. Krabs some justice, I will hire both of you to work at the Chum Bucket. His secret formula will be confiscated, and I can easily get it back. Not to mention I will pay both of you a fair and equal amount with breaks included, Plankton continued. I will not extort any customers or do anything illegal. I just want this crab off the streets, Plankton finished. SpongeBob never thought for a moment in his life that Plankton was secretly the victim in this entire ordeal, but with this footage and other pieces of evidence to back it up, there was no point defending Mr. Krabs anymore. Alright Plankton, you have a deal, SpongeBob and Squidward said at the same time, as they reached down and shook hands with Plankton. The French narrator appeared, with a title card saying,
3 days later.
Mr. Krabs was in his office counting his dollar bills, when he received a knock on his office door. Upon opening said door, he was tackled to the ground by both SpongeBob and Squidward. His claws were bound and tied behind him. as the cop music begun to play. 3 police fish entered the building and begun cuffing Mr. Krabs.
What is going on, officers?
Mr. Krabs said with nervousness. Eugene Krabs, we've had our eyes on you for the longest time. We've received an anonymous tip from someone about your crimes. The first copfish begun. Now we are taking you to court, and you will face justice for the abuse, neglect, and greed you have been doing for the past few years, the second fish said in a nervous tone. Mr. Krabs began crying as he was taken away by the copfishers. The bubble splash screen then appeared, which transitioned into the court. The jury of the court consisted of a few background fish, but also some familiar faces, notably Mrs. Puff, Sandy, Squilliam, Larry the lobster, the fish from earlier, which Mr. Krabs had tossed out of the restaurant, and lastly, Patrick was present. It has been a while since I have seen the episode. I no longer have access to it as of writing this, so I will attempt to explain what happened. SpongeBob and Squidward were up first, and begun testifying their case against Mr. Krabs. It showed various episodes for a flashback. Notable examples include Graveyard Shift, where SpongeBob and Squidward were forced to work 24 hours, Born Again Krabs, where Mr. Krabs sells SpongeBob's soul for 62 cents, and a bunch more. SpongeBob inevitably broke down into tears after recounting all the episodes and how much Mr. Krabs was taking advantage of his hard work and never fully compensating him. The poor sponge actually yelled at Mr. Krabs and completely and utterly shattered his facade of being a good person. Everyone in the jury and in the general crowd had mixtures of anger and horrified expressions on their faces. Eventually, it was Squidward's turn to call Mr. Krabs out for being such a horrible boss, constantly extorting both him and SpongeBob, overworking the both of them with zero rewards and benefits. How he cared more about a penny than the safety of his staff members. Not to mention the fact Mr. Krabs stole money from his own mother. She was a retired crab, living a comfortable life. She always treated and loved Eugene, but due to his money-hungry attitude consuming him so much, he took advantage of that kindness and robbed her. Mr. Krabs was called to the front and begun to testify against the claims that SpongeBob and Squidward made. Most of the claims and defences that the crustacean brought forward were either complete bogus, manipulated truths, or sob-stories for the sake of buying sympathy. One by one, all of the individuals in the room began talking amongst themselves about this whole ordeal. The camera panned around, showing the many sea creatures' expressions and mannerisms as they discussed their opinions. The jury during this time had retreated back to their own private room to talk. Mrs. Krabs was close to tears after she heard her own son lie through his teeth. SpongeBob left his own seat and went over to comfort the elderly crab. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, the jury had exited the room and had come to a definite conclusion. Your Honour, me and the jury have reached a conclusion. We find Eugene H. Krabs guilty on all accords, one of the fishes announced, while the other fish nodded their heads agreeingly. The judge, who was a lobster like Larry, agreed with the jury, but in a twist. Eugene Krabs, we will not sentence you to prison. That would be too simple of a punishment. Instead, we will take all of your money, remove your daughter from your care while providing her with a restraining order against you. Your Krabby Patty secret formula will go to auction, and the highest bidder will receive the recipe. You will serve community service for the rest of your life, and you will never be allowed to touch any money ever again. The judge decided. Mr. Krabs began breaking down and sobbing like a baby. He begged and pleaded with SpongeBob and Squidward to tell the judge and jury that he was innocent, but his plea fell on deaf ears. Mr. Krabs had received a visit from the almighty force known as Karma. A title card flashed on the screen, with the French narrator saying, 1 year later. The episode then cut to the final part, which showed the chum bucket bustling with customers. The rancid, old, unappealing exterior was modified and updated. The place was renamed to the Burger Bucket and sold bucket burgers for more reasonable prices. SpongeBob was smiling his happy smile, working to feed the hungry crowd of customers. Squidward still looked a little bored while working at the cash register, but he did not look depressed. Plankton himself was smiling with glee and happily counting the money he had earned legitimately. Karen was proud of her husband's accomplishments of finally getting the formula and using it to become a better person than Mr. Krabs. As for Mr. Krabs himself, well, he was never heard from again. Some say that the crab fled the city, others said that he died on the streets, but nobody truly knew what happened to Eugene Krabs. The episode faded and the credits rolled. You may wonder, with such precautions taken, how many hours we slaved away and the amount of help that we had. How did this episode not air? Well, it all came down to stress. The staff were inevitably caught fabricating this episode when one of our group members cracked under the stress of going against the company. We were all fired on the spot and blacklisted from Nickelodeon. I decided to share this story before it completely faded off from my memory. The episode is a perfect example of why you should never let greed get to your head. It corrupts you, warps you, and destroys any kind of stable life you have. And that's exactly what happened to Mr. Krabs. And if you're not careful, the very same situation could happen to you. Some may not believe in karma. I certainly did not. But after this tale, I advise you all to be good people. You never know if you could be the next Karma Crab.